And how's it going, everyone? And welcome to No Fun Allowed. Today, you are joined by a very special guest, and we are going to be talking about Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. We're going to be talking about all the things that we're loving, all the things that we can't wait to see, and all of the amazing stuff that's going to come after. So, joining me today, go ahead and introduce yourself, Eric from FryMinis.
Hi, I'm Eric from FryMinis. Yeah, so I'm a very small potatoes YouTuber. I have Instagram. I like to do minis. I paint minis. Do reviews on minis. I talk about D&D, how to make your table a good place. And right now, I'm covering Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. I've got an early release view. So if I can plug my channel a little bit, head on over to youtube.com/FryMinis and take a look as I go into way more depth than you might expect.
Oh, I mean, you are practically covering every single little crossed T and dotted I in there. You are going ham, and
Thank you.
yeah, we're going to be talking about that. So, you of course are pouring over this book like there's no tomorrow. What right when you got that book, what was the first thing you gravitated toward? Are you a kind of person that has to read from cover to cover, or are you just diving in all over the place?
No, so generally, yes, I will like to read through a book generally. However, this is my first time ever getting an early review copy of a book, so that alone, my brain still hasn't fully come to grasp with. But once I knew I was getting the book, I had said, everybody, we're going to do a live stream a couple hours after I got the book. So I did not have time to read through it all. But based on views and everything, most people seem so far to be gravitating towards the player options. So the subclasses, the lineages, and really in particular, the dark gifts.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, that's the thing it comes down to is in regards of the D&D community and all tabletop role-playing
Yeah.
games, a fifth of the content goes to the DMs because,
Yeah.
you know, it's
Yeah, yeah, just person ratio kind of thing there for sure.
exactly. You've got so many players out there, and those players are hungry. They're thirsty. You know, they
Yeah.
want to see that new stuff. And obviously, with Van Richten's Guide to Everything, not only are we getting these new subclasses, but we're also getting these lineages, which are totally fascinating and rustle people's jimmies, as it were. It's getting
Yeah, Jimmys are definitely rustled in this book. But I
absolutely.
do want to. This is no slouch for a DM book. This book is, th- I would say, this is a DM book over a player book. Really, the information in here and the mechanics and how to run a horror game. That's all this stuff is in here is phenomenal. This book. I'm not a big horror guy. I'm not a big Ravenloft guy. So this wasn't the book I was most excited about, but this might be my book of the year kind of thing. This is phenomenal.
That's awesome to hear because, you know, whenever they put out any of those polls, I know dang well that Ravenloft is the number one pick on all those polls
Yeah.
because the Ravenloft.
Spelljammer.
Well, I want Spelljammer, but unfortunately, Ravenloft is the thing because that community is just fanatical. They are going after it. There's a reason why Curse of Strahd is the most vibrant community, right? Ravenloft
Hmm.
just has this own thing going on for it. So it makes sense that they eventually cave in and make Van Richten's Guide to Everything.
Yeah,
And, you know, the variety of content that they're pouring in there, that could have just been, you know, something very simple, but it sounds like they went out of their way to make it a unique product.
absolutely. Lots of great player options. Lots of great lore information. Well, lots of information on the different domains of dread. But what has just blown me away is throughout the whole thing, it helps you run a game. This might be a spicy take, but I think this book might be a better DMG in a lot of ways than the actual DMG at how to physically run the game.
You know, the DMG, as much as I love it, I've got it sitting right there.
Yeah.
That thing is, I've read it cover to cover at least five
Yep.
times now, but I pick up something different every time because I feel like it's not exactly trying to tell me anything. Sometime in some areas it is, in some ways it isn't, but it definitely sounds amazing that we're learning how to run something unique there because horror is a genre we typically don't see in too much tabletop role playing games,
Yeah.
especially D&D. We don't see that much horror anywhere.
Yeah, so there are entire sections built for different kinds of horror, like body horror, cosmic horror, uh, dark fantasy, things like that. And there are many tips and information bits on how to do this. But one thing that I just absolutely love is a lot of them will include kind of real world advice for uh, like saying this kind of fantasy can lead to this kind of stereotype. Be aware of uh, stigmatizing mental illness. Be aware that that's a problem. Avoid it in your games, and just it lets you know like that stuff. I'm absolutely thrilled to see printed in an official book.
Absolutely. You know, if you compare that all the way back to the second edition when TSR was pumping out the dozens of different Ravenloft adventures there, some of that stuff can hold up, but there is some stuff that doesn't sit well in today's day and age. So it's
Yeah,
very good that Wizard of the Coast is actually sitting there saying, oh, you know, we shouldn't cover this and that. And, you know, we're seeing this more and more with all these new books that they're saying, hey, we recognize the past. Let's go ahead and forge a better future.
absolutely. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, and you know, and speaking of, you know, as we're forging these paths here, we see that in this book we're given all of these monstrous lists, this huge list of different domains of dread, and I'm sure you've poured over them. What are the
I'm going to be honest with you. That is the last section that I'm working
that's the
through.
last section? But you had to have at least skimmed it a little bit, right?
Skimmed it, yes. So I don't feel comfortable speaking to the particular domains, but one thing that I've seen in, if not all of them, at least most of the domains, it's information about running a character that's from that domain. So ideas on how to tweak their background, on what they're used to, on what their world perspective might be, being from that particular domain of dread.
That's awesome. You know, we typically think of when we think of Curse of Strahd as this adventure, we always think of the adventurers being dragged into this terrible world. But it makes sense that if you're running a Domains of Dread campaign, then yeah, of course, then a lot of people are just going to be from here, and it's going to be about their experiences growing up here and dealing with all of the terrible, nasty things that include whatever domain of dread that you're from. And we, you
Yeah.
know, that variety there is so awesome to see. We get deserts, we get oceans, we get just fantasy land and stuff, and all those things in
Yeah.
between.
Yeah, and the sections they all do for the different domains, and different domains have different page counts devoted to them, right? But most of them have. Here are some examples of adventures you might run in this kind of domain. Here are the horror genres that most make sense for this domain. Here's information about the Dark Lord of that domain. Here are their personality traits. So you get a complete package, a full picture, except for the stat block. No stat blocks for the Dark
Eh.
Lords.
Who
I
needs stat blocks these days?
I like it. It keeps it flexible so you can play it at any level. It's scalable. If you want to go in against a level 20 Strahd, cool. If you want to go against a level 1 Strahd, okay. Good luck. I don't know how you do any vampire against a level 1 party, but and they most of these Dark Lords do have suggested stat blocks. So for Strahd, for example, it said he's similar to a vampire lord kind of thing. So they all have ideas of directions to push a DM, but I think they're set up to where you'd really want to kind of homebrew your own Dark Lord.
You know, I was talking with actually Lunch Break Heroes, a fanatical Curse of Strahd YouTuber,
Yeah.
and we discussed the fact that there is no stat blocks here. But at the end of the day, if they had included stat blocks, each of these Dark Lord stat blocks would be easily one page. So I feel like it would
Yeah,
have,
that's a good point too.
yeah,
Yeah.
it would have absolutely, you know, marred the book's integrity. It would have been too big, and you know, whenever it comes to making these books, they always have a page limit, and so it makes sense.
256.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I hadn't even considered that. I got the collector's edition Curse of Strahd thing they put out a while ago, and the Strahd stat block printed out on one sheet is like 11 by 14.
Yeah,
It's huge.
absolutely. You know, it's this massive tome, and that
Yeah.
is something with all 5e stat blocks. Is you know they're massive. You know,
Yeah.
So speaking of stat blocks, then we did get other stat blocks, and that includes the bestiary. So what are you finding from the bestiary? Are you enjoying all your peruses through that?
Absolutely. Lots of really cool things. Obviously, most of these are kind of undead themed. In particular, at the in the very, 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 very back, I want to show you a picture of this one. I'm gonna give you an exclusive.
Heck yeah.
Check this out. This is the let's see. We're gonna see if we can focus, and I'll send you a picture if you wanna put it in later. That is the zombie clot.
Ooh.
So that is a huge, just like a mega swarm of zombies. It just has an ability called Flesh Entomb, and it just devours and just rolls over and just adds more zombies. It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely something, right? Because whenever we think of the zombie horde, in reality, a zombie horde would be terrifying, but statistically, a zombie horde in D&D is they're
Yeah,
just CR whatever crappy monsters. So having a monster like that actually being able to engulf the party, that's absolutely a fun time.
I'd like to show you one more if you'll have
Absolutely.
me. The Vampiric, and you might have seen this one online. The Vampiric Mind Flayer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that is. I don't even understand why it looks like that, but it does, and it's amazing. It has an ability, disrupt psyche and drink sapience. Just
Ooh.
as an action, you can just drink your brain away. It doesn't
That's
even have to have.
yeah, that's really tough too because most both players and player characters are usually low on the brain power there. So
Yeah,
and, it usually goes a long way.
yeah. No,
And
the monsters are very creative, very clever. Uh, of course, we could always use more. I'd love to hopefully someday see another kind of monster manual, Mordenkainen's, something like that. But this is perfectly an appropriate amount of monsters in my perspective.
absolutely, we see all these different books coming out from Wizard of the Coast. We're getting these full blown adventures, and then we get this pretty much player and DM supplement, and then we get these bestiaries, and we're getting this nice little rotation of what we're given here. And but this book, is just a complete jack of all trades package with a little spice of everything.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's great. I've never gushed over a book as much as I have with this one. It's just everything is great. I'll tell you one thing that's weird. If we can change subject for a
Absolutely.
moment. So there's a section in here is a great section. It's called Survivors. So I just put out a video on this. The idea is for a player to use a different stat block than their character. So it's like a very, very, very low level, like a CR 1/4 kind of thing. And that way your player can get the sense of fear from the monster. So it might be the actual big bad of the adventure that they're chasing, and they're just experiencing it through that. But you can also, and I love this, use it like a vignette. So your real characters are off doing their other thing, but to give an idea of how scary this is to regular people, you plop your players into these stat blocks, and then they just get demolished. uh, or maybe there's that one survivor, and they can come back, and you can do little cameos or whatever. And there's even a system in here to level them up a little bit, where you can gain up to 3 levels and get some like little talents. They're called kind of like little feats almost. And so I think that's really, really great. But the most confusing thing to me in this entire book is how their stat blocks are laid out. The rogue has a shield. The apprentice, which is the wizard stand-in, he has 4 spells he can do. He has firebolt, burning hands, minor illusion, and grease.
Okay.
Burning hands and firebolt have their spell stat, like the details of the spell listed in the stat block, but grease and minor illusion are just listed as minor illusion twice per day, grease twice per day. I cannot for the life of me figure out why that is. And the similar thing for the cleric stand-in too, the disciple.
That probably just a save space, right?
I don't know, but that's what I'm like. I have to get down to that level of a nitty gritty, like who cares kind of a thing to find a problem with this book.
Yeah, and that's awesome to hear, right? Is the fact that,
Yeah.
oh, they don't tell me I have to make a deck save with grease, throw the book away, you know.
Yeah, yeah, that's like it's phenomenal. Wizards of the Coast did a really really great job with this one.
Yeah, I'm liking that because I guarantee you, if this book pays off well, and it's going to, the Ravenloft community is fanatical, and of course the reviews are raving, then that's gonna
Yeah,
tell Wizards of the Coast to make books like this, and
absolutely.
we're gonna get better and more content later down the line.
Yeah, and with the survivors, you can also just plug in different stat blocks. So in the past before this book, I've actually done a similar kind of vignette using stat blocks when a Sawagan army overtook an island and the players were all high. They're like level 15 or something, and they're not going to care about these individual Sawagan armies, right? So we bring in some commoners and they can live out the death of a village. Uh, but we use like a guard stat block or things like that. So you can customize that. And what I think that's another really great thing with this book is it sets you up as the DM to customize it. So all these domains of dread, yeah, there are a bunch listed and they're all great, but it also teaches you how to make domains of dread, things to add, things to look for, things you might want to consider, how to make a dark lord, all that's in there. The dark gifts, there are a bunch in there, and there's most of them are really, really cool. But the homebrew capabilities of people developing these in the future, I can't wait to see DM's Guild in 6 months from now.
Oh, absolutely. The DMs, like Wizard of the Coast, is pumping out their content, but the community
Yep.
is going hard. And this book
Mhm.
is definitely going to propel people. In fact, I'm going to have stuff coming out because of this book. So that'll be a fun time as well.
Cool, cool.
Yeah. We're talking about all of this and that. I love the whole vignette thing because trading in that level 5 character who's got fireball, going back down to being a commoner with a stick in their hand. That's that's definitely,
Yeah,
it makes you
yeah,
reflect on how good you've got it.
yeah, and it can you just play differently. And so even though this is like most likely this would be for like one or maybe two sessions kind of thing you'd be playing with that character, uh, people still become attached to these. And if you do kill them, which you probably will, because that's not the idea, but it's kind of the idea with these. People still get sad, and you can have a little fun. Like my wife, she plays, and if I were to kill her actual character, she would be angry. but but here, if we were using something like this, it's not the end of the world.
So this book was designed to keep FryMinis out of the doghouse. Got it.
Sure. One other section I'd love to talk about is curses.
Hmm.
So this has always been kind of a pet peeve of mine with curses in D&D is that remove curse, right?
Yep.
It's just okay. That's it. We're done. There's no cost. I don't even think there's a material cost with
No,
it, right? Yeah.
it's just a
So
spell
it's just
slot.
yeah. But now we've got, and of course we could always homebrew options to make it just like, no, it just doesn't work, right? But now we have options on how to create a curse. It talks about the three aspects of a curse, the pronouncements, the burden, and the way to get rid of it. And it walks you through how to create those, and it gives you some examples. Um, but it also includes information about how some of these are stronger than just a typical curse, like a hex spell kind of curse, where casting remove curse might dampen the effects. It might turn it off basically for 24 hours or something like that, but it's not going to get rid of it. And I really, really like that because the other players, they can still try to help out. They can still aid the situation. You're not just permanently stuck in a situation of, well, that character is functionally useless until we figure it out. There's a way that they can keep going.
That's awesome. That's the thing with all role playing games is we want to jack up our players, but at the same time, if we jack them up too much, then they don't have fun because they're sitting on the sidelines. So
Yeah,
giving
yeah.
them something lingering so that they can still limp forward, but still move forward. That's definitely what we want to see.
Yeah, and I like the idea of letting that remove curse thing maybe have limited effect over time. So like the first time you cast remove curse, yeah, sure, but 24 hours, no problem. It blocks it. Then the second time, maybe it's only good for 12 hours, and then it keeps going down as the curse just gets used to your particular magic. I think that'd be a fun way to go.
Absolutely, and that's sort of a ticking time clock where
Exactly. Yep.
you do that once, and it's like, okay, if we don't solve this, I'm gonna die, or I'm gonna permanently have this or that. And D&D is all about giving people a time pressure because that's what the game is
Hmm.
centered around. You have to use your resources in X amount of time. So, giving people an incentive to move forward and continue the mission is absolutely awesome.
Yeah, it's never fun for a player when they're just, oh no, you're dead. Like just period. Like, oh, you lost. You need the players to feel that they have some control over the situation, that they have done everything that they could do to save themselves. And then if it wasn't enough, it wasn't enough.
Yeah, and speaking of that, when it comes to doing enough with these characters, what about these subclasses? Do these subclasses add enough to push you forward through all these terrible curses?
Great segue. The Yeah, so for like 3 sessions, I played an Unearthed Arcana version of the Undead Warlock. And if people don't know, the Unearthed Arcana version of the Undead Warlock, you could just turn all of your damage to necrotic, and whenever you would do an attack that hits and you've converted it to necrotic, you can roll the dice twice. So, for example, if you were a level 5 warlock, you would be doing 2d10 necrotic eldritch blasts, and it was just there's no cap. So that definitely, uh, if you ever watch any of my videos, I don't believe generally in like power balance issues being super critical, right? As DM, if everybody has a strong character, that's fine. I can just throw stronger monsters at you. I want you to be strong so I can use more interesting stat blocks. But when it's something like that, it's so bananas because you're probably gonna have hex up too. so so
So
now
it's the
you're doing out.
casual 2d10 plus 2d6 and just
Yeah, plus that again. Yeah,
yeah.
it's just it gets out of hand. So they did reduce that a little bit, but other than that, I think it's great, and I'm glad it was reduced. It's probably the only time you'll ever hear me say that I'm glad something was nerfed. So now you can convert the damage to necrotic once per turn, and it's
Okay.
actually the language here is a little unclear. Uh, Give me 1 second. I want to read this. I'd like to see how you interpret this,
Well,
because I'm already.
yeah, the fun thing, the fun fact about Unearthed Arcana is Wizards of the Coast design philosophy is to make the UA OP because
Yes.
they think that it's easier to nerf something than it is to buff it. While in practice that is probably more practical, what ends up happening is everyone plays the UA and then they get hit with the nerf
Mhm.
bat and then they cry later. So
Yeah. My wife played Rune Knight from level 1 to 20 with the UA, and luckily we finished that campaign before the new version came out because her favorite thing was doing that extra damage on every hit instead of the once per turn. And she in the UA version you could bring one person up with you to make them large or huge also. And now I believe that's gone.
yeah.
So and that was like a key component of her character. So it can be a challenge when you convert from UA to live. All right, so this is in the Undead Warlock, and I'd love for your interpretation of this.
Okay.
In addition, once during each of your turns, when you hit a creature with an attack roll and roll damage against the creature, you can replace the damage type with necrotic damage.
Okay.
Okay, so that's the first sentence.
Okay.
Here's the second sentence. While you are using your Form of Dread, which is a cooldown ability, you can roll one additional damage die when determining the necrotic damage the target takes. So, if you're I'm going to jump. I'm going to step on. I know I asked you, but I'm going to step on you. If you're reading those independently while you're using your Form of Dread, you can roll one additional damage die when determining the necrotic damage the target takes. That sounds like anytime you're doing necrotic damage, you can do an extra, and you're in your Form of Dread. You can just add an extra die.
Mm-hmm.
But if you read them together, and this is how I read it, you can only do that the necrotic damage, the necrotic implies that it works with that first sentence,
Yeah.
meaning only when you're doing that extra damage. but I've already gotten a lot of spicy comments on my videos disagreeing with how I interpret that. So I think that one might need some clarification.
Well, that's the thing is, once again, another design philosophy of D&D is things are left vague for the DM interpretation. In
Yeah.
regards of that, oh man. Um I mean, one, I'd have to see it on the streets, right? I'd have to
Yeah.
see how it actually plays out, but you know, yeah, I guarantee you they purposely wrote that in there just to cause some heated discussions. Right? They had to.
So I love the flavor of the undead warlock. I think the spell list is solid. I think most of the abilities are good. But the big one, the level 14, the capstone, spirit projection, your spirit leaves your body. And then you have and like you don't clone your equipment or anything with it. Both you and your spirit have resistance to most damage, to regular kind of damage. You can fly, you can hover. Cool stuff, really cool stuff. My immediate like thought is, oh, this would be amazing for scouting a dungeon or something,
Mm-hmm.
right? You can go through walls, but it doesn't. It just says your spirit. And there's no, like, you don't have a special spirit stat block. And so the question is, are you using like your stats? Are you incorporeal? Can things like what what are what is your spirit? Like mechanically define your spirit.
Mm.
And I don't have an answer for that one.
I,
Like,
I,
can you be scared? It says replicating your game stats. So I guess you can be afflicted by conditions, but can you hold stuff?
yeah, that's the thing is if you're a spirit, you shouldn't be holding things. If you're a spirit, then you should be immune to a bunch of effects.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
So that's the flavor of this is fantastic. I do think mechanically the undead is could use a little bit of a second pass on it, kind of thing.
yeah, for sure. But what about the
But
bard?
the bard I love. So I will say this is another in my comments on my videos. A lot of people are not loving the power level of the bard, but I disagree. I think this is really fun. So you can use an action to draw a tarot card, basically, and it's random, right? And then you can use a bonus action to like use it or give it to somebody. So it's like a full. If you're doing it in combat, it's like your full turn basically.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea, I think, generally is you're pulling it before combat, so that way you're not getting stuck, and that's your whole turn, the whole game. You can get ahead of yourself with it. Lots of really cool abilities: temporary hit points, cone damage, extra damage on hits, healing, curing. Lots of really cool stuff. I I know I think I know what I think you know what I'm going to say here. One thing that just needs another pass on it, I think, is the spiritual focus.
Mm-hmm.
So at 6th level, when you cast a bard spell that deals damage, restores hit points through your spiritual focus, which you get a special list of spiritual focuses you can use. Roll a d6, and you gain a bonus to 1 damage or healing roll of that spell equal to the number rolled. Now, as I understand it, raw rules is written. If you're using to use a focus, the spell needs to have a material component. You like as a DM, yeah, I'm gonna let you use it. I'm gonna let you cast the spell through your focus. Like that's no problem. But officially, bards have a list of 7 spells
Yeah.
total that qualify. Right? We've all seen the list. It's out there. That I don't know. I don't know how that one got through because I mean, even I mentioned that one in the survey.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things where once again they're probably just putting it out there just to get some
Yeah.
discussions.
The flavors of both the subclasses are phenomenal. I think they're 10 out of 10 on their flavor, their thematics, the idea of even all the individual abilities, let alone the subclass itself. I would not give that high of a score to the mechanics, whether power level or just clarity kind of thing.
Yeah, and that's something to consider is over the course of time as more classes are being added, more subclasses are being added, there is, inevitably, a need to push forward, and we saw it with Tasha as a lot of people saw the power creep creeping in. Rest in peace, Purple Dragon Knight. You are long
Yeah.
forgotten. Uh,
Yeah.
but in regards of the character options, we weren't just given these two flavorful subclasses. We were given lineages, the first of its kind in 5th edition.
Yeah, so the lineages are fantastic. I'm glad they were clarified a little bit from previous things about how they happen, how like the difference between a lineage and a race. The UA I think was a little murky kind of before, but now you can start out, you can be level 1 and you can start out as a Dampier or any of the other lineages. You can be that from the get-go and you get all your cool stuff. You can pick +2/+1 or +1/+1/+1 to whatever stats you want. And then you can, on top of that, you get 2 skill proficiencies as part of this new thing called Ancestral Legacy, which is a really, really special feat or feature or trait here for a race, a lineage type thing. So if you are converting your character, so if let's say you're level 6 and you get bit by a vampire, and now you if your DM's cool with it, now you can become a Dampier, right? So you convert. So if let's say you were an elf, you can throw away most of your elfiness. Your previous elf stat bumps are wiped away, and you can pick new ones, and you can pick the same ones, of course, if it makes sense. But you replace those with these. You replace all your other elf stuff with your new stuff. But if you're using Ancestral Legacy, you can, instead of taking those +2 proficiencies, you can maintain your previous proficiencies and any special movement speeds. So if you had a flying speed or a walking or a swimming speed, climbing speed, you can keep that. So yeah, of course, Aarakocra, 50 feet of flying speed, now 30 feet of walking speed.
OP.
Yeah.
Not that any DM ever allows Aarakocras ever, but
I know. But I think that Ancestral Legacy trait is really a clever way to keep a little bit of your character if you're converting your character from a different thing. I think it's such an easy, elegant way to do it. I was really impressed with that.
I imagine we're going to see a lot of people get affected by the Fae. I think that's going to be something that comes up a lot. So
yeah, the Hexblood is really great. That token where you can break your fingernail off and send psychic messages to it. That's amazing.
and gnarly stuff, you know.
Yeah. And opening up Hex, having Hex as a racial or as a, would it be a racial spell, a lineageal spell?
Lineageal.
Yeah, whatever. But having Hex built into your character, I think is going to open up a lot of really, really cool builds for other characters that might not normally have Hex, like from Warlock or something. And that way you don't have to take magic initiate to get it. And you can tie it to, I mean, Hex you don't really need to save, but you could tie it to whatever stat, intelligence, wisdom, charisma that you want. And it's not just the once per day. All these spells that you get with these, if you have spell slots, you can cast that spell using that spell slot.
That's pretty cool.
I know we're never going to get a second pass on existing things like magic initiate, but geez Louise, do I wish we could do that.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of discussion on should there be a 5.5. Wizard of the Coast is not doing 5.5. People, get over it. It's not happening. That being said,
with how things are selling, yeah.
Dungeon Coach is doing a 5.5, but that's.
Are we allowed to talk about that?
He's doing a
Kickstarter, yeah.
Kickstarter, yeah.
No, it's gonna be great. I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely, and so no 5.5. Get over it. But that being said, what I'm not going to get over is this book coming out, Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft, or if you get the alternate book, it should have been titled Esmeralda's Guide to Ravenloft, because the alternate cover is awesome.
I've got it back there. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you know what? I'm a sucker. On my shelf, I like having all the regular books. Yeah. I never buy the special edition books.
That's they're
all
part.
Amazing, absolutely. but I'm all about the shelf.
If I could afford to have both, I'd get both. But it's definitely tough. I can't have one special one and then the rest be the same. It just it's just weird.
Yeah. But while we're on character options, we also have information about backgrounds.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a whole new options on how to work standard backgrounds into a horror story. There's a reprint of the haunted one from Curse of Strahd, but there's a new take on the investigator because in I think Sword Coast there was there was a like you could flavor one as investigator. I forget which one, but it wasn't a full on. This is a full on special investigator where it's the kind of spooky tracking down monsters or classic detective. It's a very flexible. I've said it 1,000 times, but I was really impressed.
We're gonna get a lot of Van Helsings and or a lot of Sherlocks coming out from those backgrounds for sure.
Mm-hmm. And a new trinket list, 100 trinkets.
Not a D50 table.
No, I know.
Why do you call it a D100 table if it's a 1 and 2? Just
go ask D50. The wild magic sorcerer.
Like what I'm saying? It's just false advertising right there.
I'd like to, if you don't mind, I'd love to cover one of the dark gifts that keeps coming up in my comments that people are excited for. If I can flip to it, although I think this one is overrated, but yeah, I know. So it's called Touch of Death, and so all of these have different tables for like flavor purposes on it, but functionally for Touch of Death. Its main ability is you can focus your deadly touch against your foes. As an action, make one unarmed strike. On a hit, the target takes an additional 1d10 necrotic damage. And that it scales like a cantrip. So 2d10 at 5, 3d10 at 11, and 4d10 at 17.
Now, you said as an action or as part... Okay.
It's an action. Oh, yeah. That's why I think it's overrated. Everybody's like, "Oh, monk." I'm like,
no, as a monk, that slows down your punching.
Right? Yeah. But I think it's an unarmed attack, so you're strength based, right? Unless you have something special. But it's good to have. There's no there's no component or anything. So if you're cast away and you wake up naked on a desert island, you can still do this to go hunt pigs or whatever. I think it's a good utility kind of thing, but I think this is one that is overrated. And there's some other stuff with it. If you're grappled, the creature takes a 1d10 necrotic just automatically. You can ignore resistance to necrotic, that's cool.
What I imagine coming out of that one in particular is you're gonna have luchador builds where you take the grappling feed and or the tavern brawler and stuff like that, where basically you just punch people, you grapple them, and you punch them some more, and you're just gonna keep doing that.
Yeah, but no, there are some that are like you can get Misty Step for free. Misty Step's always gonna be a good spell. Any character, any level. Lots of really great dark gifts. It's good. It's a good book. I would never recommend a book as much as this one. Like maybe Xanathar's. I feel like Xanathar's knocked it out of the park too. Mm-hmm. I feel like these two are neck and neck for like top extra book.
That's awesome to hear. Van Richten's guide coming out with all this stuff for both players and DMs. That's totally awesome stuff. So as we go ahead and wrap this up, what are you most looking forward to coming out of this book for when it hits the public?
Ooh, a homebrew. For launch, I am most excited to see what the absolutely phenomenal D&D community can come up with. Everything in here is great, but it's just a jumping off point. Domains of Dread, there are like 30 in here or something. There are going to be 30 million. Oh, yes. All the everything, dark gifts, curses. We didn't even talk about haunted traps. So cool. You can burn a channeled divinity to disarm a trap. I love it. I love it. It just, the creativity that's going to come out of the community about this book that's what I'm looking forward to. How about you?
Yeah, same thing. I'm throwing my hat in the ring. I'm creating some Domains of Dread, and they should be available pretty soon. I'm working on them right now. I'm pumping them out.
Can you give us a tease?
Yes. So one of them is dealing with pirate islands. One
Yes.
of them is dealing with Candyland.
All right.
And one of them is dealing with basically a city with were rat thug gangs.
Ooh. I hope they talk like 1950s greasers.
Yeah, she. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh
30s
no.
gangsters too. Yeah.
Well, my greaser
No,
voice isn't on par, but
no wrong option.
yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to pumping those out because I'm not one for creating a whole bunch of player character options. I'll leave that to someone more creative than I. But I love creating settings like that, and I know I'm looking forward to the pirate one. I know the Candyland one hopefully should be intriguing enough for some people. And when can you ever go wrong with a city campaign filled with thuggish were creatures, right?
Yeah. Plus, we didn't even talk about it, but in the back of the book, there's a whole adventure.
Mm-hmm.
It takes you level 1 to level 3. And very minor spoiler. One thing that I want to make sure I get it right. There is hidden somewhere. There's a chimney witch.
Ooh. I mean,
Yes.
that's telling me right there. I want to get my hands on a chimney witch because I love me some witches.
The chimney witch is going to give you some stuff too.
Oh, perfect. Alrighty. I had an absolute blast talking about Van
Same.
Richten's
Thank
guide. I can't wait to see what comes out of that. I can't wait to see what comes out of the community. I can't wait to see, everything that comes afterward as well. So thank you so much for having. Screw you. Thanks for me allowing you to be on.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's been the time of my life. Best 45 minutes of ever.
You flatter me too much, sir. Yeah, so go ahead and sell yourself where we can find you and all that fun jazz.
Absolutely. So again, everybody, I am Eric of FryMinis. Check me out at FryMinis.com. FryMinis on YouTube.com/FryMinis, Instagram/FryMinis, Twitter/FryMinis, Patreon/FryMinis. I'm everywhere. We even have a Discord if you want to come hang out and have a chat. Every Friday nights we do painting night. We do live group video painting. It's a lot of fun. Yeah, FryMinis.com. Thank you.
Absolutely. It's going to be flashing up on screen, links down below, all that fun jazz. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. And I cannot wait to see you all in the next one.
Thank you.
See you.
Yeah, bye.